Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming in to the continued classes of the water conservation workshops here at Davis. As Don said, thank you, Don, for that information there. My name is Rob Cain. I am the Urban Forest Manager. Please let me know if you can't hear me so I can speak up. Okay. And I'm here to talk to you about taking care of trees in a drought. And really tonight, I'm going to talk to you about just taking care of trees, because whether it's a drought or not, these principles are going to last throughout the lifetime of the tree. And if they're carried out through that, then your trees and the trees that are in Davis are going to be less stressed and more apt to be able to survive the drought and continue to be healthy trees throughout what other weather conditions there are. So I'm going to be talking about mature trees tonight because that's the main focus now. The young trees are kind of able to sustain things. The kind of smaller trees don't need as much water. The large trees are the ones that get stressed. They're more apt to get pests. They're more apt for disease infestations and things like that. So the mature trees are trees that have reached their desired size and age and are large trees that we like to have and have enjoyed in Davis. They're the canopy trees that shade our streets, shade our buildings. So, mature tree functions, what do they do? What do the trees do for us? And why do we want to keep them around? Well, they provide environmental benefits and protections. So, they have shade. In the summertime in Davis, that's a good thing. Any place really shade, that's a good thing. It makes our streets last longer. It shades our houses so we don't have to use as much electricity. It provides habitat. There is a ton of habitat in Davis. As everybody here probably knows, we are a major flyaway for migratory birds. We have a lot of people stop over for the summer. We have a lot of nesting habitat. We have a lot of things like that. So those large canopy mature trees provide that habitat. And also they provide aesthetic and economic value for us. There's been numerous studies done on downtowns. We have a very nice tree downtown. A lady called Karen Wolf out of the University of Washington has done a study that a tree downtown creates 20% more spending. When people are able to park and enjoy the trees, they spend 20% more money. So that's good for our businesses, that's good for everybody else, that's good for Jennifer, Dawn, and Robert and I, because that's what pays our salaries. So that's usually a good thing when people spend money in Davis. What are those benefits that those mature tree functions give us? Well, they give us shading and cooling. They give us carbon storage. So trees store carbon. They release it when we take them down, but that might be 150, 200 years later. Trees are a renewable resource. We can keep that carbon locked up in the wood chips, in furniture, things like that. Stormwater retention. So trees will reduce that first flush of stormwater. That helps create less wear and tear on our stormwater infrastructure, which is a good thing, that we don't have to replace the sewers as often, because those are a lot more expensive to replace than trees. They increase our property values. So people like trees, we like to keep our property values up. Mature trees can add upwards of 10 to 15% to your property values. So, you got a couple nice trees here in Davis, that's $60,000 to $100,000 to your property values, and that's, money in your pocket when you want to either leave or sell your property and move someplace else. They clean the air, they help food production. They are for public safety. There's been studies done that treed neighborhoods are safer. It brings people out, there's a sense of community. There's always eyes out when people are out and around in our green belts when we have nice trees, and it creates that sense of safety and community. As I mentioned before, increased retail activity. I've also heard a study, and I don't know how they did the nexus, but it actually maternity wards where the rooms have a view of trees, the birth weight of babies is higher. That when moms are around trees when they're pregnant, statisticians, they can nexus anything. He had a pretty good argument for it. So tonight we're here to talk about drought and what that does to trees and how to take care of that. So the signs of drought stress in trees. We have wilting leaves. If the leaves are wilting, that's pretty much the first sign that your tree is not getting enough water. Those leaves are becoming less turgid. They're wilting. Early dormancy of trees. If everybody knows the California buckeye, I think every single one of them has gone dormant by now. That's a mechanism for that tree to just say, I'm tired, go into bed for the winter, and hopefully I'll wake up next spring. Increased levels of diseases and pests could be a sign of drought stress. Dying leaves staying on the tree. So I'll go over that later. I'll show some pictures of all this stuff and go through those in depth, and I'll explain what that is. And then just general canopy dieback. So those are kind of the stress signs, what to look for on your trees, whether small, large, or medium. So wilting. This is an almond tree downtown, and you can kind of see the leaf tips up here aren't looking real good. The tree looks kind of wilty, weepy. Here's an up-close picture of those. So we have the almond tree here that's weeping. Looks a little tired. There's a pistache right next door. The pistache trees are a little more drought tolerant. You can see the leaves are upright. They're nice and turgid. And so when your tree gets like this, that's going to be the first sign that you might want to add a little water if you haven't. If you've shut off your lawn water, you might want to start adding water. Early dormancy. Again, trees that have that capability, they'll just go dormant. And the thing to look for on that is you're going to get early fall color. This is a plane tree out in Woodbridge Park next to some tallows. It's tired, it's going to go to bed. These are some hackberries downtown. They have, no water probably hardly at all throughout the year, so they're going to go dormant probably early all the time, but now it's August, they're going early now. The good thing about this is the leaves are dropping off. So if your tree is exhibiting these type of symptoms and the leaves are dropping off, that's okay. That's a good sign because the tree is going dormant. It's not dying, it's actually doing its thing and just going dormant, so it doesn't have to support all these leaves because all that cellular activity takes water. So increased disease levels. These are the plane trees downtown, if everybody's familiar with those, and the ash trees in town with a leaf disease called anthracnose. It will make the leaves defoliate. These trees haven't recovered, so there's some tip dieback. Usually the trees will defoliate. After the rains stop, they'll refoliate and the leaves will come back on. So this year the trees are showing a little stress, so they're not refoliating. They're dying back a little bit, and so we have a little bit of increase of that disease. Some other diseases you might see around, powdery mildew, it's dry, that'll take off. Some pests that can really take off are in the conifers, so the pine bark beetles. And what that happens is the pine trees, when they're stressed, they do not have as much water to make the terpenes or the pitch that comes out. That's their main defense against those beetles. So when they get dry, the beetles can get in there. The tree, once they get in, will pitch those beetles out when they're in a normal state of health. So if you go up to the Sierras, that's what all the beetle kill is. I was in Colorado last week and they're having a tremendous amount of beetle kill. It was incredible to go through the mountains there and see. And up in our Sierras, we're seeing the same thing. So we'll probably see some changeover in forests and hopefully it won't burn. Hopefully we'll be able to get in there and take those trees out before any kind of catastrophic things happen. So I mentioned holding on to its dead leaves. So we have this tree here that the leaves are holding on. I think it's starting to go dormant, but we don't know. I don't know just yet. So if you have a tree, young, old, and it has leaves and the dead leaves are hanging on, that's a sign that it's probably a little late. You might want to look at getting that tree looked at, either by myself if it's a city tree or through a private arborist to see if this tree is going to make it. So just kind of a comparison, the sprinklers look like they're reaching right here. So this tree is getting a little more water. These trees back here were doing okay about a month ago. It looks like they may be on their way out, or they might just be going dormant. I have to keep an eye on them. But when a tree holds on to its leaves and they die, that's a sign the tree's in a really drought stress. It's in an extreme state of need water. You could continue to water it. Like I said, have myself or an arborist come out. They can test to see if the leaves are, if it's a young tree, you can scratch the bark a little bit. If there's still green under there, continue to water the tree. Don't stop watering it because that tree still needs water to shut down, and it might put out a new flush of growth if it's a young tree. So what do? We've gone through all these signs. We see these signs on our tree. What are we going to do to help these trees? A lot of people, like Don said, have shut their sprinklers off and just said, I'm going to get my water savings that way. So we can water. Thing to do is we can turn that, not necessarily turn the water back on, but we can find some different ways to water your trees under the canopy. We can mulch the trees, so if your lawn has died or you're doing the lawn conversion, you can put mulch over underneath that tree or a portion of that tree. What that's going to do is going to act like an insulating blanket over the soil. It's going to help retain water. It's going to reduce that soil temperature, and it's also going to add organic matter into that soil, which is really important because what we want to do with our trees and under them is mimic a forest type setting. So we take trees out of the forest, we stick them in the urban environment surrounded by asphalt and expect them to really be healthy trees, which they really need that organic matter, they need that nutrient recycling, and they need the microorganisms that come with that so that they can be healthy trees in our environment. And then also we can continue to prune them, keep them healthy that way. We can prune out the dead wood, we can prune out the diseased wood. And so those are kind of some of the things, rudimentary things we can do over time to help our trees so that hopefully they won't get as drought stressed, or we'll just be happy trees and continue to live through the drought. So watering. There's a number of ways you can water your trees without doing the water sprinklers. So there's deep watering tubes. This one has a fertilizer attachment. I really wouldn't recommend that because the mulch will do that naturally. What you're doing here, people say, well, let's feed our tree. Fertilizer doesn't really feed the tree. It's got to be broken down by whatever microorganisms are in there and be put into water soluble. That's why this is water here. So the trees have to take up things in solution. You pound the stakes in there, those have to degrade over time. The trees don't just take that up. So when people talk about fertilizing, you really need to feed the soil rather than the tree. We can lay drip around the tree. This tree probably doesn't need this inner circle because all of the fine feeder roots are outside, so we can put drip line down. We can use what's called a gator bag. This tree's probably not going to benefit from that because if you notice, everything around here is green, and this is a pretty good sized tree. Most of its roots are probably out here. These are usually used for newer trees, plus they're pretty labor intensive because it takes someone with a water truck to come fill all these. So if you have a lot of trees and don't have a lot of manpower, probably not the best way. We can use the turf sprinklers, so that's kind of in our parks what we use. When those get shut off, the trees don't get water. And this I found, I don't know how really effective that would be, but it's kind of funny. It was better than the other picture I was going to have with the little boys peeing on the trees. Probably not a good thing, but you might want to watch who's watering your trees, so that's another way. But what you want to do with watering mature trees is get the water to where the roots are. If your lawn is still there, you want to get that water past the lawn roots. Bermuda and grass roots are very aggressive at taking that water away. They're in probably the top 6 inches of the soil. Tree roots are in the top 6 to 12 inches. So that's the soil profile that you want to get wet when you're watering. So you want to target that water past whatever is covering that tree and to where those roots are. And you want to water where the fine feeder roots are, not exactly on the base of the tree. So when watering, you want to water as needed for a tree species. Tonight, I cannot tell you how much water to put on your tree. I'm sorry, I just don't have that because there's a number of factors that go into watering. What species is it? Do you have a valley oak? You probably don't even need to water it. Do you have a redwood? You probably need to put a lot more water on it through the drought period than that. If anything in between that is going to take. What soil do you have? You live downtown, you got the nice sandy loam. Probably going to need a little more water, a little faster infiltration rate. You got the nice clay in the north area. You're going to want to put that water on overnight at a very slow trickle so it gets down there and doesn't run off. So watering really is species specific and it's soil specific. What you want to do is maintain an adequate soil moisture. So that's somewhere between the soil being saturated and the soil having no water. They call it field capacity. And so that leaves water available in the pore spaces of the soil for those tree roots to pick it up. Yeah, I know. I bought it, I might as well use it, huh? And then you want to water deeply and infrequently. And so Before, if you've had a lawn, you've probably allowed the lawn water to water the trees. You're watering maybe every other day, 10 to 15, 20 minutes. I've seen some people in Wild Horse that have not changed their irrigation from the time the sod went in, so they're watering twice a day for 15 minutes, and that tree is getting adequate water right there on the surface. So you get surface roots. It's not the tree species that's the problem, it's the way the tree is getting water is why it has surface roots. And I'll show some pictures of those. So you want to water deeply and infrequently. So for a tree, that if you get rid of your lawn twice a month, maybe once a week is adequate. So we'll go over that. So I got a lot of slides and a lot of pictures to go over with watering. So here's a cedar downtown. It's got a nice open area, so we want to water out in here. It's naturally mulching itself. So as the leaves fall, here's the natural mulch. We've kept the contractor from raking up those leaves. And so it's created a nice mulch for itself. There's a lot of organic matter in there. This is not a fire hazard. Right under that layer of needles, it's going to be moist, and there's going to be moisture in that soil. So I don't know how much we'll water, but you can see there's no dieback. There's really little disease. There's little dead branches, and it's putting nice new growth on. This is kind of what we want to look for when we're talking about keeping our mature trees. We want to water out in this area. If you've had lawn under here, this is where you want to water. You don't want to water the base of the tree. So that's kind of the ideal right there. The watering don'ts. So don't water the base of the tree. Unless you absolutely have to. Do not keep the soil saturated. More water is not good for trees, especially in our clay soils. If you keep that clay soil saturated, it goes anaerobic and the roots will die, you'll get root rot, and the tree will fall over this winter because it has no feeder root, it has no root hold to hold on to it. And you don't want a frequent shallow watering, as I said before. So when you let your sprinklers water your tree, you're gonna get surface roots. So unfortunately downtown we like to do this. We like to keep the water from the trees, so I guess they stay smaller. We don't have to maintain them as much. And then we put barrier down, and we put ineffective root barriers. This one escaped. That's even steel galvanized root barrier, and it still got out of there. So here you would have to water at the base of the tree, because that's the only place that tree is going to get water unless it's going through the cracks and things like that. But trees don't uptake water through their trunk. The trunk tissues aren't meant to take up water. Here's the typical watering that we see previously. So we got the sprinklers, we spray them right on the lawn, the water goes down here, and the tree says, great, I got water. I'm gonna produce roots right here. And that's probably all the root mass that tree is gonna be. It's probably getting under the doorway a little bit because that water's gonna run under, go under. That concrete's gonna heat up, cool down, it's gonna create moisture, and it's gonna have a nice environment. So this is what we don't want. So if we're watering the base of the tree. Also, the tree trunk tissues are not meant to be underground or can take that. The roots are used to being underground and getting wet, so you get crown rot on these trees as that moisture sits there, and you can get some fungal organisms in there. Another example of this, and as the water get out here, you know, these roots are growing up, they need to grow up. Those are the support buttress roots. And so, you know, people want to complain that you plant these trees with surface roots. Well, it's actually the way we've been watering our trees. Why would it go any deeper? It's got water right there on the surface. It doesn't need to find water. It's right there. So if we have this situation, I'll show you what we can do if you want to convert this lawn over. So another thing we can do is mulch. Mulching is really great for trees. What you do want to do is you want to mulch at planting if you can. So if you're getting rid of your lawn or the city street tree has died, we like to come in and we like to provide a mulch area underneath there. There's a reason for that. Number one, it's going to protect the tree roots. It's going to keep the moisture of that root ball. It's going to keep the competition away from the grass. And it's going to keep the lawnmowers and weed eaters away from the trunk. And so we like to keep a little bit of a mulch ring. As the tree gets bigger, we like to increase that. If you could keep a 3 to 6 foot circle around your trees, that would be great. Keep a 3 to 4 inch layer of mulch underneath that tree at all times if you can. If you're just starting out and doing a lawn conversion, you can use a 4 to 6 inch layer because that's going to compact. And so you can use a little bit more in the beginning, but as you continue to refresh that mulch layer, just keep a good 3 to 4 inches. And that way, what the mulch does is it also keeps the sun away from the weed seeds. So if there's any weed seeds under there, they won't germinate, and that's their end. Plus they're easy to pull when you got it. They root in that mulch and they just come right out. So you can just kind of hula ho stuff around there. And then you want to spread them in as large an area as possible underneath that tree. If you can give up your whole lawn, that's great. Mulch it, that's great. Plant some, low water use plants. We have a lot of lists. Arboretum has some great lists. Would be great. And then that way, that forest environment's being created again. So here's somebody who called me, wanted to get rid of their lawn. I said, great, just mulch it. So they did. It looks really great. They have a nice large mature, this is actually a city street tree. They had surface roots all over. If you remember that other tree, the one back here, it looked like that. Now it looks like this. They planted some plants back here, and the tree's gonna be great. They put 3 to 4 inches of mulch there, and we're gonna have a happy tree, and it probably looks like that now, whereas some of the other trees on the street will probably be, if I went and took a picture of it, will probably be stressed and looking a little tired right now. So this is what you want with mulching. This is how you want to do it. And if you didn't want to get rid of all your lawn or put something else in, create a little circle around, and that way it keeps that mulch layer right there. So here's a couple other examples. They did a good job in the beginning, but you got to maintain it because the grass will get in, especially the Bermuda will creep in there, so you got to kind of maintain it. They kind of created a little bit of a berm to keep the grass away, but if we can move from this to our other picture, we're moving in the right directions to drought-proof our trees. And here's right outside. We could probably see the hill from right here. I took this picture because these redwoods I don't think are getting much water, but they're doing relatively well. And if people remember, this used to be a bike path, and when they redid the bike paths out here, they just kind of really destroyed this hill, and we didn't really know what to do with it. And I said, well, why don't we just put a mulch bed underneath the redwoods? We don't need the grass there. Let's put the grass on the front. Whoops. And so that's what we did. And now the redwood's creating its own mulch. Again, we're trying to keep the contractors from raking this up. If you have this, you do not have to pay your gardeners to rake that up. You can pay them to do something else, pretty the rose bushes or something like that, but don't let them rake down to bare dirt. It's not good for the trees.
I have one question, Rob.
Yeah.
How do we instruct people from maybe a slightly different culture to not take a leaf blower and blast away all the break because they think it's trash or something?
Again, if you're paying them. Oh, his question is, how can we keep the gardeners from grabbing the rake or leaf blower and blowing everything off and, putting it out in the street and having DWR take it away only to bring it back as mulch for us? Again, maybe stop them and say, hey, leave the mulch. If you're paying them, if that's your gardener, find a new one. You're paying them and give them real strict specifications as this stuff needs to stay here. There's some workshops around that we can do. Again, just maybe stop them and explain to them.
I just took pictures and they came back in this hostility.
Yeah, that's a tough question because they're getting paid. They probably are under their certain specifications. Maybe if they have, if they have a number on their truck, maybe call the supervisor and say, hey, can you not maybe leave the mulch? It's kind of good for the trees and such. So, there's a lot of things. People still top trees, and it drives me nuts. And so it's kind of an ongoing battle. But educate. Anytime you can stop and educate people on the benefits of having that, that's great. So mulching. And this is really great because a lot of other redwoods in town aren't faring as well as these trees. As you can see, they're putting on new growth right now in the middle of summer. They are probably getting a little bit of lawn water, but they've gotten, a lot. And they're on a hill, so all the water they get is going to drain off. So mulching does a great thing because it's mimicking their natural environment that they like, and they're able to live through this drought. This little guy is down at Chase Bank. You can see the amount of water he gets probably in a year right there. The bank manager continues to call me to take that tree out because it hadn't been growing, and it just sat for 2 years. It was this tall, but it was still leafing out. It was still putting on, and I knew that one day that tree's gonna just pop. And sure enough, last year it went, ooh, it's this tall right now. And this guy is starting to grow, and this guy's starting to grow. So, blue oaks are drought tolerant. It's laying down roots. It's going down to wherever this water's going that it gets, and it's surviving. That tree's probably gonna live through every drought there is because it's gonna have deep roots. It's gonna have a root mass the size of this thing, and it's gonna be a nice tree, and it's gonna shade this bank. It's gonna shade those windows. The guy that has that office in that window is gonna love that tree because if I take that tree out, he's gonna need a fan and they're gonna increase their air conditioning. So it's gonna shade the bikes when the other tree goes. So, using the right tree and mulching it is great. So use the right tree, drought tolerant species if you can. There's more being on the market. It's kind of hard right now to find blue oaks because everybody's using them. The nurseries are just now gearing up from when the housing market took a bite. And so they're just now producing things. Getting new species in is a challenge, but we're working on it. I'm working with a bunch of other people in California to get the growers to grow new trees because we get researchers saying, well, why don't you use this tree? I'm like, great, looks nice. Can't find it. Nobody grows it because they're growing the trees that the home builders are buying, and those are all the old, everything that begins with a P, I think they keep in their Rolodex. So they're planting plane trees, plum trees, pistache. What's the other culprit? There's another one. Pears. Thank you, Alan. And so I thought about outlawing anything that began with a P in town, but I'm doing the pears and the plums. The plane trees and pistache have their places. We replace them, but those are our two highest, so I'm trying to get some species diversity. Anyway, getting off track. So mulching, this tree is going to survive because we continue to mulch this, and it's a proper species for that area because I think that's the only sprinkler in that island. Mulching, so what not to do when you mulch. Do not mulch around the base of the tree. And they call this volcano mulching, and I don't know why they do it, but back east, it is a very popular thing. Don't see it as much out here. Do not use the more is better technique. So don't go around and put 12 to 15 inches. If you think 3 to 5 is better, 12 to 15 must be great because I'll never have to redo that again. My grandkids will be able to not mulch this because I put this much mulch around. And what that does is it traps the gases. It doesn't allow gas exchange through there. So it basically creates a cap over your soil, and soil's roots need to respirate, so they need oxygen as well. And so if you keep a 4 to 6 inch layer, it allows that gas exchange to come through there. And then don't use other mulches. Other mulches being rock, other mulches being cardboard, other mulches being plastic. That's great for areas that you don't want weeds and you're gonna put things in later. It's not good if you wanna keep things living. Because again, the plastic will trap in the gases and will kill your trees. If you want to sheet mulch, use newspaper. Cardboard will do the same thing. Or if you use cardboard, use one layer, because that's basically what you're doing is you're keeping light away from those weed seeds and you're solarizing the soil. That's great for when there's nothing living there. It's not real good for when you got a tree going, man, it's hot already, now you're putting this over the top of me. And if you've ever been out on the river, on the beach, those rocks get pretty darn hot. Mulch will not get hot. Those rocks will get hot and suck the water right out of that soil. There's a question back here.
Yeah, if you put the cardboard down, can you put drip on top of it? Will the drip go through the cardboard, or do you have to put drip under the cardboard?
You would probably have to put drip under the cardboard because with the cardboard, you're creating another soil layer. That cardboard would have to become saturated before that water will come out of that cardboard and into the soil. So if you want to do drip, I would say Cardboard everywhere else.
Poke holes in the cardboard?
You could do that. Yeah. So the question was putting drip on top of cardboard, which probably wouldn't work. Alan?
New grass always invades mulch. What do you do?
You can Roundup it if you want to use Roundup and spot spray it, or you can weed it. The problem with weeding Bermuda is you just create more. Yes, yeah. But you can use this, again, if it's around trees or living things, you want to put like newspaper, a couple sheets of newspaper. Anything that will obstruct that light other than, super thick cardboard or 2 or 3 layers of cardboard, because we sheet mulched an area in Central Park and it killed a holly oak. A nice big one. And I know that's what killed it because that tree was healthy before we did it.
I have some corner in my yard that has another weed grass, and I put some black plastic just to try to kill it off. It's not directly under trees, but there are trees around it. What do you think that's not? Is that
If you've already done it, I would probably say. Okay, her question was she has a corner where she has some Bermuda and she's put black plastic over it and it's still around some trees, and does she need to pull that back up? I would say if you've already done it, a few years, leave it because it's going to decompose. But if you've recently done it, it'd be worth the work to maybe pull it out and try something else or poke some holes through that. Probably defeats the purpose of trying to get rid of the Bermuda, but Bermuda is just a tough thing to get rid of, and you guys kind of hand weed it and keep going, so that's a tough one. And I'll kind of keep going. I'll have a question and answer period after, but questions like that on the topic that we're doing, I'll go ahead and take questions.